Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am back, and this is the end of the year for me as far as the episodes go. I will have one more episode to put out before the actual new year, but it's not going to be a movie podcast episode. It's going to be a special episode, and I'll talk more about that when I get to the end of this episode. But this is the last movie podcast episode of 2025, and I said, you know what better way to end this year than talking about the movie Sinners. Now granted, the original plan for this month was to do one battle after another, which I did do for episode 360, but I was also supposed to do Weapons and Superman, but I wasn't able to get around to doing it and everything. Maybe those movies will make it into 2026 at some point of me reviewing those movies, but the original plan, card is subject to change, if you will, and everything. But Sinners definitely was going to be the last movie I reviewed for the year. I kind of did it like that on purpose because for me, I have a lot to talk about when it comes to this movie. Which came out way back in April at the movie theater and has been a hot topic for biggest of the year, and rightfully so, and everything. So there will be a few things I talk about this movie that I don't think a lot of other people have discussed or anything, and I've done a very good job of avoiding listening to other people review this movie. Because I didn't want my opinion of the film to sway or anything. So I've avoided every single podcast that I listen to that have talked about it, and everything. And I've pretty much avoided anybody else giving any like real review, and everything about it for the most part. So after recording this episode, I will go back and listen to podcasts that I listen to that have reviewed the movie just to hear what they have to say in comparison to my opinion of the movie and see how it lines up. Because that's one thing about when it comes, I would say for me, as I've gotten older, that when you watch a movie, and I would just say this, when you watch a movie, you shouldn't let other people's opinion, influence your opinion of said movie. If it's something that you really, really want to see, or even if you didn't really want to see, but you did finally take time to watch it, I would always say, check it out, look at it for yourself, then you judge it based off of how you feel about it. I think I talked about that in the last episode, like based everything off of how you feel about something. And everything, opposed to letting other people kind of influence, or what the masses are saying about a certain movie influence you, good or bad. Like when you see the trailer or a clip of a movie, what does it make you feel and everything, and then you judge it based off of that, not what so and so said, not based off of what so and so said, and everything. So that's one of the things about. And I will say this, that this movie did have a lot of opinion, a lot of praise. And then, of course, there was the naysayers and everything. But let's get into talking about why I felt like Sinner should be the film that I end the year on. I mean, even though I saw it in the movie theater back in April, I saw it twice at the movie theater. I went once by myself and once with somebody else to see it, and both times I immensely enjoyed this movie. I mean, the cast is great. I mean, everything about this movie is awesome, and everything. And like I say, I'm not gonna go full into talking about it here, because I'm gonna wait a little bit before I start talking about a few things that stand out to me and why this movie makes my list as far as being one of the best of 2025, and everything. But both times, like I say, seeing the movie, the movie sticks with you because of not only, like I said, how great the cast is, and of course you have Ryan Coogler, who is the director, the music and everything about it, but a lot of the themes and messages that are throughout the movie, and that finale, which is a epilogue, but also like after credit scene all at the same time, but it felt like it could have been this, like it felt like a little short story, or let's just say a short film in itself, in a way, and everything. And how, I mean, this movie, it does something to you. If you're someone who had parents or grandparents, depending on your age, that come from a time similar to this. Because, like, for me, the movie takes place in 1932. My grandmother was born 2 years after this movie takes place. So she relatively grew up similar-ish time of this movie. My grandfather, who was born in, I think it was 1920, what was it? Because he was a bit older than she was. I think he was born like 1920 something. I forgot exactly what year he was born, but I know he was born before this movie takes place. So growing up around people who, you know, not only grew up around this time period, you know, and everything, and listen to them talk about things of like how things were and stuff like that, you kind of get, I feel like people who watch the movie, you know, and enjoy the movie a lot, we all kind of have similar elder statesmen of our family who grew up relatively around this time period. So, and if you spent a lot of time around them and listen to them talk about the time, I think you get more of a sense of appreciation for what this movie was, opposed to a lot of people who might not have had, you know, parents or grandparents who grew up around this time period. Not saying that if you didn't have anyone that you were close with that grew up around the time period that you wouldn't. It's just that I feel like the initial connection to this era for people like me, you know, and everything, who did have people who grew up, you know, around or born around this time, you know, I think it was more of a natural, oh, that relates to so and so in my family, whether it was a grandparent, parent, aunt, uncle, whatever, and everything like that, and everything. So I feel like that's one of the reasons why the movie kind of resonates and sticks with me in a lot of ways, and from people who have talked about the movie on social media, because like I say, it was a huge hot topic, and like I say, there were, I mean, threads, X, everywhere people were talking about this freaking movie, and everything. And like I say, the reason why it was one of my favorites of 2025 is just because I would say this. Now, you can say whatever you want as far as your top 10, your top 5, whatever movies of the year. But I do not understand if you're someone who do not have this movie on your top 10 list. Now, whether it was near the top or the bottom of your list, I don't care. But there's no way that you could not have this movie a part of your top 10 list if you are a movie fan, if you're not a movie connoisseur or whatever. There's no way that you could not have this movie on your top 10 list. And the reason why I say that is because this movie is the movie of 2025. And I say that for the simple fact of, can you name, anyone who's listening, can you name another movie that had the impact for the entire year that this movie had? And when I say that, as far as getting people to go to the movie theaters, not 5, not 6, not 7, 8, 9, 10 plus times to see this movie and enjoying it every single time. People were going in droves to the movie theater to watch this movie, and it was going over and over again. What other movie had people going out to see a film like that? When they say, oh, the movie theaters are dying and everything, well, Sinners prove that people will go to the movie theater to see a movie multiple times if it is something that they truly desire and truly have a connection with. Now, there have been a lot of good movies who've come out this year, but at the same time, what other movie that came out this year invoked that type of reaction and in a way revitalized the movie theater experience, you know, and everything? And also too, because of the music in this movie, with the blues and everything, got people of a younger generation who might not have necessarily was a fan of the blues, started listening to blues music and everything because they wanted to have, continue off of that wave. So this movie, in a way, it did two things. It got people going back to the theater, in masses. And it also got people listening to a genre that's always been there and always will be there. But for some people, they might not have really had a desire to listen to it. And when they started listening to artists, blues artists and everything, it's like, oh, wow. Like, okay. And everything. I don't know another movie that's done that in recent memory, really. And everything, and especially not this year. So if you can name another movie that had the same type of influence, impact on audiences as Sinners, please let me know, because I would love to know what the movie that is, because I don't think there's been another movie that's done that, even though the other movie that I reviewed earlier this month, One Battle After Another, as much as I enjoyed it and everything like that, it does not have the same impact that Sinners had. And even though One Battle After Another in some ways is more current to a lot of stuff that's going on, Sinners is something that's kind of timeless, and it's something that's always been going on when it comes to certain topics in the movie. So yeah, like I say, that's the reason why I feel like this movie is one of the best and everything. And I will say it right now that Sinners is my number one movie of 2025. And everything. I have no qualm about saying that. So, yeah. All right. So let's get into talking about the movie itself. So Sinners basically is I'm going to say it in two different ways. I'm going to say the kind of generic basic way, and then I'll go deeper into it. So the generic basic way is that Sinners is basically about two brothers who come back home to Mississippi. And they decide, hey, we're going to buy this old slaughterhouse or whatever. We're going to turn it into a juke joint. We're going to make some money type of thing. We're going to have a great opening night. We're going to name it the juke joint, even though that's what the place is. Places like that are called in general, but they're going to call there's the juke joint. We're going to get some of our friends, the town. They're going to come. They're going to have a good time. We're going to make some money, and we're going to be good. And essentially that is the basic idea of what the Smokestack Twins wanted to do. But unfortunately, some little vampire named Remick, he pops up and causes calamity, and and everything goes haywire or whatever. But the other way that I would describe the movie is basically you have the Smokestack Twins, played by Michael B. Jordan, who comes back to town. They have their, individual stories, because you have Smoke, who has a wife, and Annie, played by Wimmy Masako. And they're dealing with a lot of stuff. There's a lot of history with them, and the fact that they're still married, and he just kind of, I'm going out to buy a pack of cigarettes and never came back, kind of thing, until years later he pops back up with his brother and everything. They have their whole thing. And then you have Stack, who has a history with shit, I can't remember her name. Why can't I remember Haley Steinfeld character's name? Why is that? What the hell? Mary. Yeah, so Stack has the whole history with Mary, where because she is a white passing, person and everything like that, and they had a relationship and he basically abandoned her or whatever, and then they kind of rekindle their, relationship as the night, goes or whatever. And then their cousin Sammy, who is at the center of everything, who is a church boy. His dad doesn't want him playing that, devil's music basically and everything. But he, wants to be with his cousins and, wants to be a part of that life or whatever. And then he gets the attention of Perlene, and all this. And like I say, just all the different characters that show up in this movie. And I would say this one thing I enjoy about this movie is that the movie doesn't become a horror movie in a sense until like almost halfway through, because like when you're watching the movie, you're basically hanging out with these people, getting to know the characters. You get to know the difference between Smoke and Stack just by the little differences character wise that Michael B. Jordan brings to each character, even though it's him playing both characters, but you can tell that they are very different from each other. And I think that's something very hard for one person to do when they're playing twins in a movie like that, is to give each character, kind of different characteristics where you can tell which is which, and everything. Like I say, he does a fantastic job here. Miles Camden, his first role, similar to Chase Infinity in One Battle After Another, surrounded by all these great actors, but they also get, their moments to shine and stand out in their own unique ways, and everything. And like I said, the character of Sammy is at the center of Sinners, in a way. But then also too, you have Wemi Masako as Annie, who's Smoke's wife, and I think she does a fantastic job in the role that she's given, and everything. And then Haley Steinfeld. I mean, I think people kind of forgot that Haley was a very good actress in a way, because if you only know her from like the Pitch Perfect movies or her turn as Kate Bishop in the MCU, and things like that, or even Bumblebee, right? You kind of forget that she was nominated for an Oscar when she was a kid for True Grit, going toe to toe with Jeff Bridges and Matt Damon, and everything. Like that was her first movie, and that movie put her on the map and everything. And she kind of went away from those type of movies as she got older, but it's like Sinners kind of brought her back to that type of realm in a way. With this movie, kind of brings her back, like, oh no, she's a damn good actress. You kind of forget about that. And then Jack O'Connell as Remick, who, I mean, he's had a very interesting year. I mean, between this and the whole 28 months, years later, and all that and everything. And then of course his turn as Remick here in Sinners. I mean, he tapped into something where he's like a very good villain. Like he kind of plays like a villain that you love to hate in a way. And then also too, it gets you to the point of thinking like, well, is he truly a villain? Or whatever. But before I go into talking about that necessarily, like I said, talking about how the movie unfolds, you get to spend time with these characters. Perfect example, like you get the essence of who Delta Slim is when he's telling that story when they're riding in the car. You know who that character is. And even though it's somebody from 1932, you could almost say that you definitely could relate to someone who's like that. He is someone who, he's been through some things. He's the older, wiser, but at the same time, he's a cautionary tale. Like basically, you don't want to end up like me, type of character. And like we all know someone kind of like that to a degree. And I think Del Rolando does a great job, and he's actually, well, I will save that and everything, but he does a great job, and I wish that he would get nominated for an Oscar for this, because I feel like it's one of his best performances of his legendary career. It's one of his best performances, and everything. And like I say, everyone in this movie is great. Like, it's rare when you watch a movie where everyone understands the assignment and everyone plays their part, and it's kind of in comparison again to one battle after another, where you have these really good casts and everyone plays their part perfectly. Like it's great to see. Like, you kind of get movies like this again, because you would get movies like that in years past where it's like, oh, everyone is just stellar in their roles and everything, and then it gets to a point where it's like, yeah, well, that's such and such is good, but that character, that person there, they wasn't so great in it. But it's good to see where you get the right people playing the right parts, and it just, everything just meshes and clicks perfectly together. And how we learn a lot about the characters just by spending time with them. Like, the first half of the movie is pretty much you spending time with these people, getting to know each one of these characters, so that when all hell breaks loose and people start getting knocked off, it's like, yeah, you feel when they die, and everything, because you spent time with them. Another person that kind of stands out, but stands out in a funny way, because their defining moment in this movie is be kind to one another. And I'm talking about Omar Benson Miller as Cornbread, and that whole thing of where okay, in a way, he wasn't even supposed to be there, because Stack pulls up on him, while him and his wife, they're out there, shucking corn and everything, picking corn. Well, it was either corn or cotton. I think it was cotton and everything. And he basically like, hey, you want to come work security? You gonna work security, be the, the bounce at the door basically. And the wife kind of like, yeah, go ahead and make that money, man. And everything. He wasn't even, like I said, he wasn't even supposed to be there. And then he goes and he's out there and everything. And then he's like one of the first ones to get turned and everything. And the whole thing of him trying to get back inside is like, it's hilarious, but also it's kind of creepy at the same time, because it's like, yeah, this is the person that we know, but we don't know this person that's talking right now. Like, you're not talking like how you normally talk. Like, who are you right now? And everything. Like I say, that whole thing with him throwing his arms up, be kind to one another and everything. And I always say, like, if as soon as he did that, if that was me, he'd have been shot, because it's like, I know this is not you. Like, something is wrong with you right now. And everything. But like I say, everyone just stands out perfectly in this movie, and everyone has their own kind of battle that they're facing. So once again, kind of tying it back to one battle after another, everyone kind of have their own little battle that they're going through as well, and everything. So the way the movie pretty much sets up for what's about to happen, everything leads to the juke joint, because we get to spend time with everyone when they go and like, okay, well, we need food, we need the signs, we need to basically get the word out, like, this is gonna be the place to be tonight and everything. So you're spending time with all these characters getting ready, and then they finally get there, they set the place up, and all this, and then the party is going on and everything. You're spending time with them there, and like I say again, you just vibing with the characters. You seeing Smoke, he just pretty much kind of surveying the scene, looking real stoic and everything, just waiting for something bad to go down. He gets into it with Stack and Annie about the fact that you got some people coming and paying in, basically wood money. It's like, it's not real money and everything. And Stack and Annie basically like let him know, like, look, that's how them people get paid. So we got to accept that too and everything. And which I thought was a good scene, because you don't really see stuff like that in movies, especially back in the day. Like, yeah, that's how, unfortunately, that's how black people used to get paid. They didn't get paid in real money and everything, but it was their money. So if they paid in that, like, the black businesses kind of had to accept it to a degree, and no, they were not making a profit from those quote unquote dollars, but unfortunately, that's how it was in a lot of cases. And I did like how that was included in the movie. And then, like I say, the whole thing with Stack and Annie, how they, not Annie, but Mary, how they, was kind of, well, Stack was trying to avoid Mary, but Mary was being very persistent and everything. And then when they finally, basically start dancing and they kind of hook up and everything. It's like, okay, everybody, it's kind of, we're just having a good time. And then Sammy gets to have his musical number, in front of everybody. And that whole scene where his singing basically transcends time and space in a way. And seeing that scene in the movie theater is, I would say that's a scene that you just have to see on the big screen. Yeah, it's cool to see it at home and everything, but when you see it on the big screen, and just how at first when you see the Bootsy Collins looking guitar player coming in, you're like, wait a minute, what the hell is this at first? But then as it continues to go, and then you see like how it's him playing, how it's going through all the genres and generations, and you realizing like, yes, the blues connects everything, and everything like that. And because of him and his singing, when Remick is passing through, that's what kind of gets his attention. It's like, wait a minute, what is this over here? Oh, okay, well, maybe I need to go over there and see what's going on and everything like that, right? So, because I always make the joke when it comes to sentences that Remick, he was not seeking them out. He just was passing through and just happened to say, oh, what the hell? Hey, what's going on over there? Oh, maybe I can use this to reconnect with my ancestors, because we don't know exactly how old Remick is, but we know he's old as hell, just through dialogue and things like that, and everything. And I always say, like, yes, for the movie purpose, he's a villain, but in a sense, he was trapped, in a sense, in his own right. Because first of all, how did he got to America somehow? And I guess he just been trying to find his way home. Granted, when we first meet him, he's running from the Native Americans who was hunting him. And I know people always say like, yo, we wish we'd got to see more of them. And granted, so it would have been nice to see more of them. But it just kind of go to show like, yeah, Remick ran up on the wrong people. Because when we first see him, he do have a black eye. They beat the hell out of him and everything. It wasn't just for him flying basically pretty much in the sun, as the sun was, was setting or whatever. But I think they did beat the hell out of him before he ran up out of there, and they just was chasing him. And then when they realized the sun was going on, it's like, all right, well, this is somebody else's fighting, and hopefully they succeed. And like, we did our part and everything. But is he really the villain, or is he more of a, he has a sympathetic story also, but he just goes about it in the wrong way, because this is the way that he knows, I feel like, and everything. And I do like the fact that even though the movie is called Sinners, everyone is kind of dealing with a sin in a way, and everyone for the most part has to sacrifice in order for Sammy to live, and everything, which I thought was very interesting, in that sense. Like, everyone made a sacrifice in order for this young boy to live and be able to live the life that he was destined to live, basically. So the movie does a very good job of, you feel like this is a lived in world. You feel like this place is real. Like, if you went to Clark's, Mississippi, like, you feel like, okay, I know this place, because that's how Ryan Coogler makes this place look. If you went to that juke joint, you feel like you're right there in it, and everything. So he does a very good job of making this movie feel like a real world in a way. Like, that town is real. And I do like the little things about how you don't realize unless you really pay attention. Like, Bo and his wife, they had two shops, one on the black side of town and one on the white side of town. And the way you know that is that transition shot of when their daughter Lisa goes, she leaves the black store to go over to the white store to get the mama, and she comes back, and it's like that one tracking shot, and you realize, and like, oh yeah, they making money on both sides of town, and everything. So it's just how this movie is filmed. I think it's very well crafted and everything. And it's like how it goes from this bigger scope when they're in town, and then as night begins to fall and everything, descends into the juke joint, it becomes a little bit more claustrophobic. And once Remick and his clan basically are trying to take over, basically, it feel like it gets smaller and smaller and becomes very claustrophobic, and everything. And I don't think too many people talk about that too much. I mean, I could be wrong, but I always felt like, and like I say, that's where the horror element comes into play, where it becomes a very claustrophobic thing. Like when the people, like the last ones left, who are our main cast, are trying to survive. Like, if you notice, the juke joint kind of gets smaller and smaller, just from the scale of everything. And it's probably one of the best, like visual movies when it comes to a black movie, and everything. And it just showed like everyone looks great on screen. Everyone looks great, and that's always been an issue when it's come to black movies, is that a lot of times they don't know how to light black people in movies, especially more dark skinned black people. But here everyone looks and is, the color and everything just looks great, as far as how it's framed, how it's shot, the colors and everything, how it pops off the screen, everything. I know I'm just saying it looks great, but everything looks great, right? And I will say this too. Even though there is a lot to unpack when it comes to this movie, the story does feel very restrained. Like, we get a history of the Smokestack twins through dialogue. We don't see any of it, but we just learn, little things about them from conversations that they have, like how Smoke had to defend Stack against their father. He basically killed their father when they were young. And also too, the reason why Smoke can't roll his own cigarettes is because the man is suffering through PTSD from being in World War I. And everything. I guess he really went through it. I mean, granted, because Stack was with him, he went through it too, but it seems like Smoke went through a lot more. Who knows what he had to really endure and do, because even though he is his brother's keeper, but who knows what else he had to do, especially in the war. And that's always kind of lingered with him, I guess. Going back to when they were kids, he was always protecting Stack in a way. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about that, like getting to the end of the movie and everything. But the fact that, he can't roll his own cigarette because he has that tremble. The only time that he has a steady hand is when he's shooting his guns. But other than that, his hands has that shake. It's kind of that same shake that Tom Hanks' character has in Saving Private Ryan, and everything, which I thought was a nice touch. And like I say, little things you learn about them as the movie goes on. And like I say, what you learn about each character as the movie goes along. Now, whether or not Pearline was really married or not, we never know. Granted, she said she was, but did we really believe that she was married? I'm under the sense was that she wasn't married, but she was, because Sammy was much younger than her. She told him that she was married and was basically like playing, kind of cat and mouse with him a little bit and everything, until they have their moment in that back room, which is still kind of insane to see it played out on big screen. And everything. And I know that was always something that people talked about in a funny way, and everything. But I will say that this movie, it feels very confident in its approach to telling this story. And even though it becomes I always say like Assault on Precinct 13, type of movie, where people are trapped inside and they have to defend against, the horde that's trying to get inside. Well, I'd say Assault on Precinct 13, Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead, that is, movies like that. It reminds me, it puts me in the mind frame of movies more like that. Granted, I know some people, oh, it's a ripoff of From Dusk Till Dawn. And it's like, well, From Dusk Till Dawn is a ripoff. But and a perfect example is that the fact that the freaking son that's in the movie, he's wearing a Assault on Precinct 13 T-shirt in the movie. But I guess we don't think about that. We don't focus on that, right? But all Sinners was a ripoff of From Dusk Till Dawn. I'm like hell. I'm like, but if you take away the fact that you have two brothers, and they end up, with a group of people trying to survive or whatever, and you take away the vampires aspect, how exactly is Sinners a ripoff of From Dusk Till Dawn? I want somebody to tell me that. How exactly? I still haven't heard anyone tell me, because I've had conversations with people about this, and every time I ask, take away those few basic similarities. Tell me exactly how Sinners is a ripoff of From Dusk Till Dawn. What exactly is it a ripoff of? Because the last time I checked, Smoke and Stack are nothing like Seth and Richie. And neither one of them is like Richie at all. So how exactly is it a ripoff of From Dusk Till Dawn? Do they share a few similarities? Of course, but then name me one movie that's come out in recent years that you can't say that is in comparison or takes elements from older movies. Tell me that, right? All right, so like I say, people who just felt like they had to say nonsense about the movie to kind of downplay its influence and its impact, it was saying stuff like that. For the most part, but the movie is very confident and very deliberate in its approach to the story that it tells. And in a sense, the movie could really have been two different stories being told. You could have had just, okay, two brothers come back to town, getting linked up with, their old friends and everything, and they having a big party, and the movie could have ended. It could have been a coming of age movie. If they didn't include the vampires, it could have really been just a coming of age movie about, Sammy, when the night he spent with his older cousins, him getting to play the music, and, him meeting this woman and everything like that. And then when everybody leave, Smoking Stack could have took care of old Hogwood and his clan afterwards. And that could have been the end of the movie. And it still would have been a very good movie. Or it could have been, okay, they having a thing, and then Remick shows up and they get the whole vampire aspect of it, and they deal with the vampires, and they still kill Hallwood and his clan at the end, and everybody go home happy. It's either way. I feel like either way, you could have still got a full length movie out of both kind of aspects of the movie. But the fact that the first half of the movie is somewhat of a coming of age thing, and then the second half is more of the horror vampire thing, and they just kind of go hand in hand together, and in the end the clan gets murdered, which is what you want to see, because screw the clan, right? And everything. And it's just, like I said, I enjoy everything about how you basically take elements of, not just like, you take elements of different genres and you masterfully, infuse it all together. Pretty much. And I don't think, especially naysayers, I don't think they understand like the impact of what this movie meant, or means, I should say. And everything, or maybe they do and just don't want to acknowledge it, because you have a lot of people who they fully aware of what it means, but because it's a black movie with a predominantly black cast, and just want to downplay it for whatever reason, and everything, which is just ridiculous to me. So let's talk about some of the standout performances, because I've talked about a few of the characters throughout this so far, but let's put some focus on some of my standout characters. So I will start with Annie, played by Wunmi Mosaku, who, like I said, is Smoke's wife, and she is I won't say a voodoo priest or what, priestess or whatever, but she's very aligned with the spirit world in a way, and she does know the magic, and we understand that she has protected Smoke, for a long time with that sack that he wear around his neck that pretty much was protecting him this whole time. That's why, I guess that's the reason why they all always kind of came out of situations, because we just know that, they survived World War One and they were in Chicago, kind of running game with the Irish and Italian mob and everything, but we don't know like to the extent of like situations they were getting into up there. But I'm pretty sure whatever situation, they always came out, unscathed because they were being protected. And Annie pretty much lets him know, like, just because you wasn't around don't mean I wasn't protected. You wasn't protected, and there's a reason for that and everything. And just like how she's like one of the biggest voices of reason throughout the whole movie, and everything. And a lot of what she does kind of helps in a lot of ways and everything. And like I say, she just does a very good job in this freaking movie. Another character I talk about is that of Remick. Even though he's the vampire, he's the big bad here, but I think he's dope from a character standpoint of where he is just trying to get back home, but because his natural instinct is to basically, cause destruction and take over, but essentially he wanted to be reconnected with his ancestors. And he felt that through Sammy's gift, he could get that. Granted, he was going about it the wrong freaking way, but, he didn't, that's the only way he knew how to get what he wanted, was to just take. And when you have that pushback and everything, that's why you got everything that ended up happening, because of the pushback, and everything. But I think Jack O'Connell does a very good job in this movie, playing Remick. Of course, he gets to have his, musical number also in that scene, even though the fact that they took like an Irish jig type of song and all of them out there dancing, and it's like, this is insane too, but in a very good way. It's like, this is insane. Because imagine being the survivors inside, looking outside, watching that, and you'd be like, what the hell? Like, wait a minute, what is this? What are they doing out there? But it was dope though. And I remember watching the movie theater. People was actually, getting into, when he was doing his, dance, and they were moving and going. It's like, okay, this is actually all right. We get into this, right? And everything. And then another character that I will talk about, like I say, Delroy Lindo is Delta Slim. I think he does a fantastic job here, even though, and it's kind of ironic that, yes, he is the elder statesman of the cast, but also character wise, he's supposed to be like one of the elders of the, even though I've always made the joke that even though Delta Slim looks older character wise, I felt like he's supposed to be like maybe his like mid 30s or whatever, because of how people age back then. It's like, yeah, but even though Delroy Lindo was in his 70s, but I always felt like the character could have easily just been in like late 30s or whatever, and everything. And just like say, the fact that his drinking is something that actually saves his life. And like I say, when he's telling the story in the car about how he was a part of this band and everything, and how, when they got paid and everything, he was the only one who got paid in alcohol, when the rest of them, they got the money. And then the story that he tells about his friend who was trying to go start a business, and they claimed that he stole the money, and then how they killed him and everything. And that's why he drank. And that's the reason why he drinks, and all the stuff like that. And like I say, just the little character things that he do throughout the movie, I think is just great. I know I keep saying freaking great, but it is. This movie is phenomenal. Um, and everything. And like I said, I feel like that's the reason why he should be nominated for Best Supporting Actor for an Oscar. Really, is because like the little character moments that he brings to the story, whether he's in the forefront of the camera or if he just like in the scene, if you just kind of pay attention to his character, like little things that he do, it just yeah. And like I said, it is very Academy Award worthy in my opinion. We'll have to wait and see, but I feel like he definitely deserves to be nominated. And then I ended with Michael B. Jordan is Smoking Stack. Like I said earlier, he does a great job of making the twins seem very individualistic. Like even though they are twins, they feel like two separate people. And just how when it's Smoke and when it's Stack, the way they dress, the way they carry themselves, the way they even talk. How Smoke is more methodical and Stack, he's more kind of, he's kind of outward. He's more the spokesman, where Smoke is always the one that's kind of off in the back, just watching everything. Yeah, I think, like I said, it's probably one of his best roles, and it shows like, no, Michael B. Jordan is a movie star. Like he's always been a very good actor and everything, but it seems like here in the recent years he kind of hit that stride of like, no, he is an amazing actor who is a movie star, and I'm looking forward to his turn as Thomas Crown and Thomas Crown Affair to see what he does with that. Also, I'm looking forward to see if we're going to get any more of his John Clark character from No Remorse. Like with Rainbow Six, are we going to get that? Because that Tom Clancy story, and I feel like that is a very good like character for him as well. If you've never seen it, I do recommend checking that movie out. And like I say, I would love to see if we get the sequel about Rainbow Six. Like I say, Tom Clancy and in the games and stuff like that. If you know anything about it and you know anything about that character, and yeah, like I say, I really wish they do make that next movie, and everything. And the fact that, so that's pretty much about the characters. Now, one thing I really, really like about Sinners is the fact that the story isn't force fed to you. Like it's a movie that you really have to pay attention to. Everything isn't just spelled out for you. You have to listen to what characters are talking about and like just pay attention to everything that's going on. It's not one of those movies you can just, especially if you're watching it for the first time, it's not one of those movies that you can be on your phone with, which ironically, I think it was the first time I saw it. Yeah, there was a guy that was sitting a few rows ahead of me, and he was literally like on his phone. It's like, well, why are you here? Why did you come see this movie if you were just going to be on your freaking phone? And then I think he was asking his girl, like, oh, what's going on? Like, well, if you went on your damn phone, you'd pay attention to what the hell was going on. But that's why I like movies like this that don't just spell everything out for you. You have to actually watch and pay attention to what's being said, and also kind of make connections with certain things through dialogue, and everything. So yeah, I mean, I know I'm not giving a full review of the movie. I'm talking about certain things that stand out to me, but that's kind of how I wanted to do this. But I will end this talking about that ending part of where we come to quote unquote current day, which is 1992. No, it's 91, I believe. It's either 91 or 92. But anyway, and we have old man Sammy, who's played by Buddy Guy, and he just wrapped up a little set and everything, and then in walks Stack and Mary. And when they walk in, and he's looking like, how? And the fact of, we go back to what happened, at the end of the film, when Smoke and Stack are fighting, because at this point Stack had got turned into a vampire because of Mary going out and wanting to talk with Remick and his people, and she gets turned, so she comes back inside and she turns Stack, and so they are together. But when everything goes down with Smoking and Sammy, when they kill Remick and everything, everyone that's been turned to a vampire, they all burn up in flames because the sun is coming up. So we just assume that Stack is dead because we see Smoke, he ends up, getting his guns, and he has the whole shootout with Hogwood and his clan. And then of course Smoke ends up dying because he was shot and everything. He gets to go to heaven and be with Annie and their child that died at childbirth, and everything. But here, when we get to current day, we have Sammy, like how. So when it goes back and shows like Smoke forced Stack to promise him like you would not, you would leave him alone, basically. And he does. 60 years go by and he only decides to just let him know, like, yeah, I've been following you. I've been paying attention to you. He's like, yeah, you like, I really enjoy your music. I really enjoy the older stuff. Like when you had when you still got the real in you and everything. And like I said, I think it's a dope scene, like just them at the end having that moment. And when they have their moment of talking about, neither one of them have forgotten that night. And Sammy says, until the sun went down, it was the best, it was the best night of my life. And then Stack says the same thing about, it was the last time he saw his brother, last time he saw the sun. And it is very tragic when you think about that, because yes, it is the last time he saw his brother, but this is also the last time he saw himself. Because, like I say, you take that in a couple of different ways. Like I say, yes, it was the last time he saw his brother, but it was also the last time he saw himself, because of the fact that vampires do not have reflections. He cannot see his brother. He cannot see himself. And he's bound now to darkness, and he's with the woman that he loved, Mary, but they're trapped in a sense. So it almost, in a way, they are kind of like what Remick was, just to a lesser degree. They're not trying to take over. They're just living their life, going through the different generations and staying with the trends and things like that. But they're trapped in a sense too. So it's, in a way, the movie does have like a bitter sweet ending. Like Smoke gets his ending in death. Stack gets a bittersweet ending because he's left to basically walk the earth, and it's, like I said, it's kind of a sad ending because everyone pretty much had to die in order for Sammy to live his life. But it's still very tragic when you start kind of breaking certain things down. It's like, yeah, I've done it a few times. I want to break it all down, but it is, in a sense, is like everyone had to die in order for Sammy to live. And the fact that he named his club after Pearline, the woman he spent that one night with, but she had a lasting effect on him for all those years, and he named his club after her, right? And like I say, it's one of those movies, and I think that's the reason why it sticks with people, because there's something that everyone can kind of relate to. You feel something when talking about it and everything like that. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for this episode. I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank you all for listening throughout the year, for listening throughout December and everything like that. My favorite character of this movie, of course, is Delta Slim. I don't know, just something about that character that I just really enjoy a lot, and everything. And it is my number one movie of 2025. and everything. Like I said, this is the last movie podcast episode of the year, but it's not the last episode of the year. I have one more episode, and that episode will be me doing, for the first time ever on the podcast, I will be holding my own award show, where I will have different categories and I will determine best like performances, and basically, like I say, it's gonna be basically my own Oscars and everything for the year. Something that I feel like I really should have done, probably started a long time ago, but I decided to do it now. So that will be how I end 2025, with the first ever J Movie Talk Awards podcast episode, and everything like that. If you want to follow me, of course, you can follow me over on Threads, on Instagram. Threads is the J Giles. On Instagram is either my personal page, the J Giles, or JMT Podcast on Instagram. Also, I'm on TikTok. J Movie Talk over on TikTok. And also the YouTube. If you have been listening to the podcast on the YouTube, you can definitely comment down below your thoughts about this movie. Also, if you want to know more about what I'll be doing as far as the award show, you can hit me up over there as well. Like I said, I'm still working out some things about the YouTube, because I won't say too much about it, but in 2026, just be prepared to know that the YouTube channel will be, I will say, something that I want to really get going and everything. I do appreciate people who have been supporting me over on YouTube. I have been a little bad with getting the clips out like I need to, so that's something that I'm going to work better on and going forward, and everything like that. Again, thank you all for listening. I will be back for episode 362, where I will do the award show and close out 2025 with a bang. So until next time, peace.